finally, no one in the world can stop me from hitting the runway. From this point forward, I identify as you, Gisele Bündchen, and you, Bella Hadid, and you, Chrissy Teigen. Okay, maybe not you, Chrissy Teigen. It seems like you're a bit of an asshole. But Victoria's Secret has finally gone woke, and no one can stop me from hitting that runway. I've got the heels and the walk to prove it. I am ready, America and the world. Are they worldwide? Yes. For my purposes here, they are worldwide. They canceled the Angels and all the fashion shows and announced a whole new strategy. Yes, times, they are changing. And Victoria's Secret was a dying brand and had to change with it. But did they make the right choice to go woke, to allow me, the most beautiful woman in the world, to walk their runway? What were they thinking? Well, I'll give you a peek at what they did and deconstruct what this business is about and what their options truly were and what I might have chosen. First, let's get into a little backstory. Victoria's Secret was founded in 1977 as, and this is a quote from a New York Times article, where men could feel comfortable shopping for lingerie. By the way, mission not accomplished. Still deeply uncomfortable shopping for lingerie. Even the name referred to male fantasies of this prim Victorian lady who became naughty in the boudoir. I don't even know what a boudoir is, and I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that properly. But apparently that was the inception moment for Victoria's Secret. Then in 1995, it introduced the Victoria's Secret fashion show, which was supposed to be a cross between a runway show and a pole dance, which I'm not a big strip club guy, but obviously it appealed enough to be on network television for 20 years. That's longer than any other show for the most part, except maybe, I don't know, The Simpsons or South Park. You'd have to be animated to outlast the Victoria's Secret fashion show on television. But then the world changed. Now the world is full of niches. I said niches. There is no more middle. Everyone wants their own special thing. And also there's just commodity production of everything. Everything can be stamped out in China in no time, super easy, and they could put any name they want on a label, and any company can do that, even a small entrepreneur startup. And you can cater to almost any fetish discreetly online. You don't have to be that creepy dude who walks into the lingerie section going, excuse me, would you mind trying this on? My wife, this is exactly your size. Which, by the way, I'm not sure if that ever happened, but I'm sure that was a fantasy that some guy has conjured up at least once, especially in this video, at least once. And the world of influencers, they are changing what's being sold, and also different body types. Now it's not just those hot angel type bodies. It's, my kind of body also. And women want comfort. And men want their women to be comfortable. Trust me on that. And I can't even tell anymore, honestly, if a woman is going to work, the gym, or to bed, because the outfit is the same. It's like some sort of stretchy pant and some sort of stretchy, top, and everything looks like they're about to hit the gym or hit me for trying to figure this out while I look at them. Anyway, I'm not that creepy, but it is kind of funny that all of our worlds have meshed together. And the catwalks are completely different. They're much less white or young and thin. It sometimes feels like some of these companies started out with a list of all the isms, sexism and ableism and ageism and jism. And then they made a list of all the impairments, and then they threw them all on the runway. Here's the wheelchair girl and the trans veteran amputee and Shrek with a yeast infection and much, much more. Anyway, I actually think I joke about it, but it's a much more accepting and better world, and it is as it should be. But, the traditionalist in me is like, listen, you can put all kinds of different things on the runway, but I'm attracted to what I'm attracted to. But that shouldn't be the limit of what is represented out there. So I recognize that, even though I have my preferences. And I would guess that the Angels are a little bit closer to my preferences than the, Shrek with a yeast infection. I don't know where I came up with that, but just bear with me. These are jokes, people. Okay, I'm trying to make this entertaining. This is a company with big problems. In 2020, their sales dropped to 5 billion from 7 billion, but it's still a company with 32,000 jobs in retail globally, and it has 1,400 stores. And all of these people are depending on some sort of reliable answer on what the hell they're going to do. And they had a private equity deal to sell a majority for 525 million. That fell through because of the pandemic. And also they've had other issues. So Les Wexner, the founder of the company, he's actually the owner of L Brands, which also owns Bath and Body Works. He was a big buddy of Jeffrey Epstein. Like, those two were tight. And no one really knows the extent of that relationship. But you know, it doesn't look good when you're on Epstein's log very often. Epstein's log, that sounds dirtier than I expected. Anyway, they were also known for having this misogynistic culture and that they had sexism and sizeism and sizeism. I wrote that in my notes, but okay. And Victoria's Secret's share of the women's underwear market has also been plummeting. They dropped to 21% last year from 32% in 2015. So that's a pretty sizable drop. So the next brand after that is Hanes Brands, which has 16% market share. But the thing that no one ever talks about until today are the two big lies that their business was always based on. The first is that guys care about lingerie. Most guys, and I'm speaking for straight guys, and I'm sure there's straight guys that differ, but most straight guys do not care. These are speed bumps on the way to something you feel so fortunate to be getting in the first place. Oh my God, there's a woman who's actually willing to be naked in a room with me and to potentially have sex with me. You do not want impediments that are hard to unhook, they're lacy, and you don't know what to do with this stuff. These are all things that we never wanted. But women were made to believe that men wanted these things. And because of that, this entire company perpetrated all of these frauds onto their own customers. So for example, by trying to be sexy all the time through a man's lens, they didn't offer any maternity or post-mastectomy bras because, hey, that's not sexy. And they prompted it to sell push-up bras instead, which are uncomfortable and women didn't like. And they also never celebrated Mother's Day because, God forbid, mom is not sexy. And so this whole thing was built on a house of lies because no guy wanted this lacy obstacle course. It was always for women, but Victoria's Secret was the last to know about that. The second lie that the company was based on, and actually still permeates society and really was what the fashion show and the angels were based upon, is that men want these giant, skinny women that they put on the runway. Nothing of the sort. That was never the case. It's not even close. Do not blame straight guys for what has been perpetrated by the fashion industry, which is mostly female and a lot of gay designers. This is what they think is sexy or what's sexy to them. Guys have a way broader range, and you can prove it. You can look at views of the typical porn or adult video, and you will see all kinds of sizes and shapes and colors and, everything, tattoos, whatever it is. Guys are actually way more forgiving and way less focused on a particular type than they're given credit for. So this entire fraud of this body type has been perpetrated on women for ages, and Victoria's Secret was one of the main perpetrators. Now, far from being alone. I mean, even now I hear people saying, oh, all these expectations that guys have of women. No, we don't. We are grateful. We are so happy you showed up. And there will be a guy for a big girl. There will be a guy for a tattooed girl. There'll be a guy for the pierced girl. There'll be a guy for a formerly guy girl. There will be somebody for everybody. And this has been a problem that has been created by the fashion industry. So no one wanted the angels. Yeah, I mean, they're attractive women, probably more empirically attractive to the typical guy. But most guys are far from typical and they've got range. And if you ever want to do this experiment, do like fashion show casting, put it out on Craigslist or whatever, and have different panels judging the women. Have like a panel of people in the fashion industry, see what women they choose, and then get a bunch of regular guys, a bunch of Guidos from the Jersey Shore, and see who they choose. I bet you there's a lot of women who are 5'2" and a little bit plumper and very different looking than the ones that show up on the other casting call. And if you do this experiment, I will publicize it gladly. But this has been a huge, huge fraud, and it continues to be perpetrated, not just by Victoria's Secret, by every other company. And the only ones who are honest about it, ironically, are the porn companies, because they just put all this stuff out and then people self-select, and you look at the views and you see that there's a lot less discrimination than you would think. So this brand really was in trouble. Times have changed. They needed to change. They're struggling. What do? Philosophically, I guess you could embrace what you already are if it's working. That was not the case. You could redefine what you want to be and then cut away all of the fat. Or you could change for the people who you think would want you or what they would want you to be. So here's what they decided. Victoria's Secret is basically saying all the right words in terms of diversity and purpose and inclusion, all the stuff that trends on Twitter, but it comes off like woke soup because every other giant brand is saying those same things. And so the chief executive of the brand in February said, quote, "We need to stop being about what men want and to be about what women want." And I agree. And honestly, that's always been the case. They just didn't know it or act like it. And they put in an entirely new executive team, which is mostly women. Same goes for their board. And this new Victoria's Secret is saying, okay, no more angels. And they replace them with this new group of women icons, the VS Collective. The selection of the women in this group is based on their achievements and not their proportions, which makes sense because look, I've never been a big birthday person. Why don't we have a celebration of important milestones or achievements, things that you actually did? Being born, I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't even there. To give me credit for it is unfair. Maybe you should celebrate it with my parents, but that's about it. It's the same thing here, philosophically at least. Yeah, we should celebrate achievements, but what are we going for exactly? So I'll give you an example. So this is a list of women they chose. So the first is Megan Rapinoe. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. She's the 35-year-old pink-haired soccer player who's always campaigning for gender equity. Then there's Eileen Gu, who's a 17-year-old Chinese-American freestyle skier who's going to be in the Olympics. There's also a 29-year-old biracial model and inclusivity advocate, Paloma Alcacer, who's, I think, one of the few size 14s to ever be featured in Vogue. Then there's Priyanka Chopra Jonas, who's married to one of the Jonas brothers, but she's also a very famous Indian actress. Then there's a Brazilian trans model named Valentina Sampaio and a South Sudanese refugee, Adut Akech, and then a woman who's a photographer who started this digital platform for female photographers. They've basically created a Noah's Ark of fashion, like one of these and one of those and one of these. And that's fine. But the question is, will it sell products? The former chief executive of the catalog division, Cynthia Fettis Fields, she said, if it was a $7 billion pre-COVID business and much of that $7 billion was built on blatantly sexy approach, be careful with what you're doing. And she has a point. This is a company that's built its entire brand on selling thongs and lacy lingerie. They're going to have to balance serving these existing customers and then meeting the expectations of this Noah's Ark of people. Like the tiger is going to want something very different than the parakeet on the ark. No one writes about the peacekeeping difficulties Noah had on this ark. They only say, oh, well, he built this ark and he saved all the animals. Well, did he? Because I suspect there's going to be a lot of chewing. And when you finally take all of the remaining animals off the ark after the Great Flood, I suspect there are going to be a few missing. Maybe the same thing with Victoria's Secret. All these competitors are already positioning themselves to represent all of these other women's bodies and on inclusivity and diversity. American Eagle's Airy Lingerie, they have also activists that they've hired, and they're starting to lure customers away from Victoria's Secret. Even Rihanna has a very solid competitor in the lingerie business. It's a brand called Savage X Fenty. And they're doing a lot of the same stuff. They're promoting what women want. And Rihanna even said women should be wearing lingerie for their own damn selves. And they're using trans and disabled models and plus size models in their fashion shows. And Victoria's Secret is trying to keep up. They've introduced a Mother's Day line finally, like 40 years too late or whatever it is, 30 years. And they had a pregnant model and they're starting to sell nursing bras. Everyone is getting into it and it's easy to do because there are all these companies that don't have a brand and all these easy manufacturing facilities that would love to partner with a Kim Kardashian or any of these influencers. And all these influencer-led brands, they have a better shot at this market for a couple of reasons. First is they're challengers, so they're starting small. They don't have to play defense and keep the customers they have because they're starting with no customers. And it's also more organic and more cohesive because it's tied to the vision of a single person and not to this collective of influencers for hire by committee, because that's a whole different ballgame. The other problem with influencer by committee is when you're focusing on this woke demographic, they are never happy. Everything is a tripwire. Almost everything will offend somebody, or you're going to make a wrong move and you're going to have a PR disaster. So when you target that audience, be aware that it is a very, very challenging audience to go after. And already you can see these fissures starting to form. So Megan Rapinoe, who's one of their spokespeople, has already called the brand patriarchal, sexist, and really harmful. Those are her exact words. She also said she was convinced to join the campaign by the brand's willingness and the executives' willingness to acknowledge their mistakes in history. And she's also consulting on the language the company uses, the assortment of products, and the narrative. So they're basically paying reparations for the sins of their past through people like Megan Rapinoe. I'm not saying it shouldn't be done, but I'm saying that is a very challenging brand positioning when you're essentially apologizing for what you were for 35 years. And then their other model, this is the plus size model, Alcesser, she said that she joined because, and this is her quote, "I didn't start modeling to just do all the cool stuff. I did it to change the world. With platforms like VS, where you enter the living rooms of all people, that's where you make radical change." She saw her role as lobbying for Victoria's Secret to increase its sizing to XXXXXL. So she's lobbying for something else. Megan Rapinoe sees comfort and apologizing for your past as something important for them to do. This other model, she's saying she's for the plus size community, and she set her expectations at a very unrealistic level. This is still an underwear company. And if your goal is to change the world with underwear, good luck. There's a company called Away. They make luggage. And there was this whole piece or expose about how all of these young woke employees claimed that they were tricked because they believed in this grand mission of this company, and they were let down by the executives who just didn't live up to their vision of perfection that they wanted. They're making luggage. It's stuff you use to get on a plane, maybe with a USB charger. If you're putting your beliefs and your hopes and your dreams of righting the world through physical goods, You are miscalibrated. No company can do this. And there have been other similar exposés of other startups where young employees were so idealistic because they're coming out of college, they want to change the world. And these companies take advantage of it because they pay them less and they get them to work these long hours and they tell them they're going to change the world. And guess what? When they find out that luggage and underwear don't actually change the world, don't even have the capacity to change the world, that's problematic. And that sets you up for serious disappointment. And it's also setting Victoria's Secret up for serious disappointment because they're bringing some very vocal spokespeople on board who are going to disagree with things that they have to do to keep their business afloat. What if you stock all of these XXXXXXL sizes and no one's buying them? And you're like, well, we're going to have to take them off the shelf. Well, is one of your models going to walk, or is she going to say something really damaging to your brand? Or is she going to not show up on the next show that you do? Or if you're doing a publicity tour, she's not going to show up? That's very possible. So this is where you start putting this wokeness in conflict with business. And it's a very risky move. Let's put it that way. And look, the company has way more data than I do, but so did the creators of the women's edition of Ghostbusters, where instead of being organically for women and having a great story that just happens to feature these different women, they wedged it in and forced it in. And the movie didn't do well because they didn't focus on the story. It wasn't organic. When you start to staple all of these woke things onto your brand without it being organic, like it is with Rihanna's brand, you're going to run into some serious problem because everyone is pulling in different directions with their own agendas. It's like at the end of Braveheart, they tie each of his limbs to a horse and they all run in separate directions. That might happen to Victoria's Secret. Spoiler alert. Usually in the first phase of the 4 C's of innovation, the first phase is context. So one of the things I look at is this intersection of what you aspire to be, what your actual capabilities are, and then what the market calls for. Now, normally, when you're doing that kind of work, you're talking to management, you're talking to employees, you're talking to customers. You go observe their operations and their stores. You identify the assets that they can capitalize on that are maybe underutilized, but really have an ability to differentiate them. And you do a lot of secondary research and primary research. But in this case, I didn't have access to all that. So I'm kind of winging it based on what's publicly available, but I think it'll give you an idea of what their real options were. So first, let's talk about aspiration. Their stated aspiration, according to their chief executive, is to empower women. The exact quote was, "to be a leading global advocate for female empowerment." I love the idea. I'm all for everyone being empowered. However, there are very few things that actually lead to real empowerment. Real empowerment comes from things like education, because that gives you the confidence of knowing. It gives you a qualification. It lets you walk through that door and get that job or feel confident that you know something. Connections to others who maybe have opportunities for you, or some sort of network that maybe supports you through the tough situations. Capital is important, especially if you're starting a business, or you need to buy a house, you need to buy a car to get to work, whatever it is. Capital is real empowerment because now you have the tools to go out there and earn or be your best self. Underwear is nowhere to be found on that list. So all of these things are kind of cosmetic. They're not real empowerment, but maybe they give you a little bit of a momentary feeling of empowerment. It's not found in posturing on social media. And it's certainly not found in tokenism. No one feels empowered by a female-led movie that no one watches. They would feel empowered if it was a great story and it made sense for that movie and it wasn't just some token gesture. And no one wants to be patted on the head. Oh, congratulations, you're the best woman leader in marketing. No, you are the best marketer. And once you start breaking people down into those groups, you're taking away their accomplishments. And I know people are going to disagree with me on that, and I don't care. This is my show. I can say whatever the hell I want. I think you should aim to be the best regardless. And so that is real empowerment. Everything else falls short of empowerment. So the next thing is assets and capabilities. Victoria's Secret has 3 things they're bringing to the table: brand, retail footprint. They have a lot of stores that they could do things with. And the third is capital. Like, yeah, they're not rolling in money, but there are people who are willing to invest in their business. So they are actually in a better position than a lot of other companies that are challengers. But that also comes with some liabilities. Their brand is not well. Also, it's bad quality. The actual product is crappy. And it's fundamentally non-essential as a product. Like, you need underwear. Do you need lacy underwear? Not really. And that's why it's such a stagnant business, because you can do without. So where are there opportunities for Victoria's Secret? At first I thought I had this amazing insight. I'm like, I got it. I know exactly what they should do. And I was really excited because I thought I was done with this, but it's much harder than I thought for a couple of reasons. One is I don't have that insider information that I would want. And secondly, the places they can go are very limited. At first I thought, okay, product and product innovation is where they should focus. And what if you embraced your dark side and you just became this great adult product company? Look at all these porn models who can be wearing your clothes. You can embed the product in every single one of these sites that gets millions of views. They get more views than YouTube in a lot of cases. That's right. Faktor Carlson gets 100 times more views than Tucker Carlson, which ironically also sounds a bit trans, if we're to be honest about it. Maybe Tucker should change his name to Faktor Carlson. He's going to hit some real numbers if he goes on OnlyFans. Anyway, there's a company called MindGeek that owns Pornhub and a whole bunch of these other major sites. Maybe they should buy Victoria's Secret. That could be a good fit with their business. But there's a few problems with that. So first of all, you're not exactly in buying mode when you're doing what you're doing on those sites. Like, your hands are busy, let's face it. And then I'm like, maybe they could do tech and gadgets and dolls and things that are interactive and more future oriented. But no matter how you cut it, these are all niche markets. And a lot of people would prefer not to walk into a physical space to do any of this stuff. And on top of that, sex is over. It is so over. Millennials are not having any of it. So I was looking at the statistics. In 1991, 44% of high schoolers said they've had sex. By 2019, that dropped to 20-something percent. There was even a crazier statistic. By 2018, the percentage of men under age 30 who report being virgins, having zero sexual partners, you know what that number is? 27%. Almost a third of males under 30 have not had sex. Something is off. Sex is over. Then I was like, okay, let's talk about fashion, which is their core business. They could start by just making a better product. Just make better bras. Word of mouth would help them significantly. But bras and lingerie, that's a very small and stagnant commodity. And they're looking at things like athleisure, which is Lululemon strength. They basically created that category. And now everyone's copying them. And you've got all kinds of influencers doing that as well. If they're just going to become another athleisure brand, I don't know that they're going to differentiate themselves much. At that point, you might as well be Kirkland brand, like from Costco. You'll have your Kirkland hummus, your Kirkland sprinkler system, and your lacy Kirkland panties for when, I guess, hummus isn't the only thing you want to spread. I'm going to go to prison for this. Anyway, just a word to Costco. Don't you have any other letters at your typesetter? Like, you don't have to name everything Kirkland. You could have another brand. No one wants to know that their hummus and their panties come from the same company. Right, just a sidebar. One thing I thought could be really creative to do in their physical locations and could be really innovative, sort of like a Build-A-Bear or American Doll for lingerie, where people can walk in and customize their own designs. And they could even have them 3D printed at the store or delivered to their house. But it's still niche. Like Nike does this with sneakers, but very few of their customers actually want to be in the sneaker design business. Most of them just want the cool latest sneaker worn by, their favorite basketball player or something. Then I started to drill down into services inside the store. The very first thing is just better service. Knowing body types and sizes and inventories and getting people in and out of the store faster, or helping them find things they didn't expect and surprising them. All things that could probably drive their business substantially. The other problem is the companies that are most successful developing service brands have some complexity to their product. Like you go to the Apple store, everyone's confused by their computer or their phone. There's something you can't figure out, or that's going to need repair, or that's going to cause you to have to come in. And that is what they count on, because that complexity drives sales, that complexity drives visits, and you don't have that with bras and even outerwear or any kind of clothing. There's one thing that I wanted to brainstorm a little bit more, but didn't have a chance to, which is sort of a membership club model. And I think that needs more exploration. Like, what would a Victoria's Secret member want? Intuitively, there's something there, and I don't know exactly what it is. Then I started thinking about channels. Well, could they just be all online, eliminate the cost of all these stores, and become like an Instagram brand? The problem with that is you have to really shrink down. I mean, you're talking about way smaller numbers, because the ones that are successful doing it are challengers, not incumbents in this industry. I think they really have to double down on their physical presence, because that's really what differentiates them from all of these other online-only competitors. And it has to be more experiential. So I was thinking, well, could this become an entertainment retail hybrid? What if there was a design reality show, sort of like Project Runway, but focused more on intimates and other categories that they want to pursue? And what if all of those designs were sold exclusively in their stores? People who shop there get personally invested in the designers. Like, they actually care about their lives and their successes and their accomplishments and their creations. And you can create this constant flow of new product through these people that you actually now care about. And they can host shows in the stores, and you can bring back runway shows, and they could be much more diverse, all different kinds of women. And it could almost be invite only for parties of friends. Soul Cycle does a great job of this. I went to a friend's birthday party where she did a free Soul Cycle class with all of her friends. And there's no reason that these guys couldn't do the same thing and have this runway experience inside the stores. But it's very tough to execute. And they could do the same thing with makeovers along with their designs. Maybe even the customers could get in on it. What if you could design all this stuff with your friends? What if you can do these fashion shows of things you actually made? And it could be almost like the karaoke bar of the future, where instead of just singing other people's songs, you're wearing each other's designs. I'm not sure there's a market for it, but these are all things that I thought might be interesting. And even at a local level, imagine you can source product designs from your city, and those designers become like local celebrities, and you give people full transparency into the design process. There's so much interesting stuff that can be done there, but the level of execution is so hard and has to be top notch. So I'm not sure that these ideas would scale. Now, the other option, which is a little bit of a cop-out, is licensing. Let others figure it out. I did a lot of work for clients, licensing work, that is so huge. For example, Kathy Ireland is a $2 billion business. She has 17,000 products that use her name. And in case you don't know who Kathy Ireland is, she was a model from the 80s. And she just parlayed her name into, an empire of cheap Chinese crap that is sold everywhere, from furniture to clothing to, cooking stuff. Like, she's got it all. 17,000 items, $2 billion business. $2 billion for Kathy Ireland, not that far off from the 5 that Victoria's Secret has. So it's not so crazy. There's admittedly some dilution in the Kathy Ireland world because, what are you? I mean, you're a model, but are you great at furniture? Are you great at all this other stuff? Or did just a bunch of Chinese companies start stamping your name on a bunch of their products? That's the challenge. You still have to define the brand. You still need an image. You still need something that you stand for, whether it's quality, like for example, Honest Company, that's Jessica Alba's company. She essentially sources stuff from China. And some of the products were of questionable quality and she got into trouble with some of it. But at least they tell you what they are. They're honest. They're honest that they're trying to do their best with crappy sourcing from China. But at least the goal there is clear just in the name. Victoria's Secret doesn't have that anymore. So what should your branding be if you're Victoria's Secret? One thought I had is something along the lines of from him to me. That shows you their change in focus, but also makes it about the woman and changes the lens. And VS could be Victoria's Secret, but could also be very sexy. And they could bring sexy back to every item and be the authority on sexy. But they need to define it. What does it mean? I don't know that you can do that with a consortium of random influencers with their own agendas. It's sort of like you're trying too hard. It's like, hey, whoever you are, we'll make you feel good. Wait, are you a strong black woman? Are you a sassy white girl? Are you an older lady who's proud of her hips? Whatever you are, we'll be that for you. And I don't know that that world exists anymore. When you're letting everyone in and everything is sexy, you're more of a women's shelter. You're not really a brand that stands for something because at this point, there is no way to edit. There's no way to say this belongs and this doesn't belong because now it's everything. So it's sort of like that department store strategy, and department stores are failing. Ultimately, this is a brand from another era, an era that's over. And they're encountering pretty much the same problem that Playboy encountered because they also had to choose, right? Are they going to go deep, balls deep into the sex direction, which was super crowded because, do you really care about brand when everyone is naked and having sex on video, like every person imaginable, including Kim Kardashian and all these other people? There's too much there, but there's also too much in the other direction they chose. They're like, oh, we're going to be a content site where women are also dressed in clothing. And it's kind of neither here nor there. They're trying to appease a new generation that doesn't want their product because it was born in this other generation. And does the world need another content site like Mike or HuffPo or any of these places? They're all either out of business or they were bought up for pennies on the dollar. It's the same problem that Sports Illustrated Swimsuit had because they're also trying to be more inclusive, which is all great. Who is that audience? Because the guys don't want the inclusivity necessarily. They want what they're attracted to. Like I remember when I was a kid, man, times were tough. You would wait for either the Sears catalog. No, Sears catalog was before my time, but there were other catalogs like Macy's had a catalog and there were a couple of other ones that had all these models that were very skimpy in their outfits. They're all wearing like underwear, whatever, but airbrushed out anything that could be even remotely suggestive, all the nipples and all that other stuff. So my childhood was a struggle. To get through puberty was painful because you had to find these magazines on the streets near the homeless guys. You had to wait for catalogs that have been airbrushed. There was no internet. This is my struggle. Without nudity, there's no point. There's no point to Playboy. It was failing and it's going to fail. And I have no idea how they make money right now. No idea. Victoria's Secret problem also isn't that different from The Gap. The Gap was born in another era. So how do you convince a new generation to shop where their parents shopped? Hey, want to look like your dad from the 90s in khakis and, like a polo shirt? That's not that appealing either. I've heard that The Gap had an uptick in sales. I haven't looked at their numbers, to be honest, but it's very hard to be seen as something other than a relic of an old generation. This new generation, they want H&M, they want Zara, they want all this fast fashion stuff. And you know what? Their kids are not going to want those things either unless they evolve. Department stores lasted a long time, but go ahead and try to convince someone who's under 25 to shop at Macy's, where black and white Christmas movies were shot. It's tough to resurrect these old brands. Now, there are companies that have done it successfully. Target, they did partnerships with high-profile designers, but they did lower-end merchandise that was exclusive to Target. So they did a partnership with Isaac Mizrahi, Massimo Giannulli, Michael Graves, and a few others. And they started to stand out. They were appealing to these yuppie buyers, and their procurement was really good. So you would go in there and you would find stuff that other places didn't have. They had taste. And that's something that Kmart and Walmart and all these other places didn't have, because it was just, a bunch of ugly stuff that was super cheap. And Target was able to charge a little bit more because everything kind of looked a little bit better. J. Crew is another company that started doing more upscale designs. They were a little bit more niche because their prices were higher than the Gap, but they lucked out because Michelle Obama was a fan and some of these other big time celebrities started to wear their stuff. So they started to climb out of their hole. It's not hopeless. I guess I see it a little bit like global warming. It's not going to be just one fuel source that replaces all of fossil fuels. It's going to be a portfolio of solutions. If I were giving any kind of advice to this brand, first, you have to make it about people. It can't be about the product. It can't be about your influencers. It has to be about your customers and how you make them feel. And on some level, you also have to embrace what you really are. And I don't think they know who that is, because right now it's this weird amalgamation of these random influencers. And I don't think this woke group is going to propel you to success. I think that every woman probably will. You have to speak to her. Anyway, I'm Steve Faktor. If you enjoyed this, please realize it takes a lot to create these episodes. So support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/McFuture. Subscribe, share it with others, and I will see you next week on the McFuture. Some of the weird stuff that's offered in Japan. They have these places you can go to be hugged. It's really sad, but yeah, and not even hugged by a regular girl. You're hugged by someone in a furry outfit or some sort of cosplay thing, or you're being hugged by Wonder Woman or Wonder Woman's mom or Batman, whatever it is that you're into. You can't rely on the kinky old pervs to keep you in business. At some point, you're like, okay, well, here's Quasimodo and a bustier.